Hello and welcome back to another episode of the For the Property Investor podcast. And we're here with the weekly news. And of course, I know that because Nick Bendel's staring at me. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Owen. I can't help but stare at you. You are a very handsome man.
Thanks, Nick. I am married though, so just yeah. But thank you anyway. And Nick, what have you been up to in the last week? Anything interesting?
I've had a
Work-wise, yeah.
wonderful work-wise. Okay, I was going to say watching the World Cup, but I won't say that. In terms of work, as you know, Owen, my business, Hunter and Scribe, it's a copywriting agency. We write content for brokers throughout Australia. And over the past week, I've been helping 3 brokers write 3 award submissions for the Australian Broking Awards.
Cool. And you don't know if they've won yet?
No, we haven't submitted. We haven't submitted the submissions yet, and so time will tell. I think it's still a couple of months before we know, and we're still going through the process. It's been very enjoyable. What I like about it is you get to have these really interesting conversations with people about what's going on in their business. And even though I'm not a broker myself, you just learn a lot about how to run a business. And I'm lucky to work with some incredibly successful business owners, and I get a free lesson every time I interview them.
Great. Well, I'll congratulate you in advance, Nick, for when you win these awards.
Well, that is very kind of you. As I always say, I provide maybe 1% of the contribution, the broker's the 99%.
Cool. Well, I've had some fairly interesting discussions this past week. As you know, we've got our national property management business, Leafield. We cover 5 states. And we work with quite a few referral partners, like business partners, like buyers agents, mostly. But we do work with a few local sales agents as well. And we work with them as an outsourced solution to help them build a property management business, which is the only asset you get in a real estate business. Yes, we've been talking to a few new sales agent businesses who are struggling to and finding it difficult to start their own property management. So yes, we're their outsourced solution for them to do that. So that's been the interesting thing for us in the past week. But yes, Nick, have you brought us 3 new stories this week?
I have brought 3 stories. Our first one is brokers set new record. Mortgage brokers have reached a record 81% share of Australia's residential home lending market, according to research commissioned by the MFAA. That compares to 55.3% 8 years earlier. The MFAA said Australia is one of the only countries in the world where brokers write more than 80% of home loans. International data is hard to come by, but it appears the UK is the only country that has a greater broker penetration at about 85%, while Holland is not far behind Australia at about 76%. Owen, I know that you used to be a broker and you know a lot of brokers and work with a lot of brokers. Why does broker market share keep increasing?
Well, it's one major factor. It's service and then providing choice. And so if you've got a professional on your side who is able to sit down and work out which bank and which product best suits your situation, and then helps you to find out of the short list of those which one has the best rate, and you can get approved for, then why wouldn't you use them? And especially if they're not charging you a fee. There are some very good brokers that do charge a fee these days, and I think those fees are warranted. It's Yeah, very worthwhile service.
Yes, I agree with you in terms of, I agree with everything you say, but especially the bit in terms of fees being warranted for the brokers who do charge a fee, because the advice they give you could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars or even literally millions of dollars in the years ahead. So definitely worth it. Then let me ask you this follow-up question. If brokers are so good, why did it take so long for broker market share to surpass 80%?
Well, 80% is a big deal. It's I remember when I was a broker many, many years ago. Yeah, it's over 10 years ago now, in fact. And yeah, we were talking about getting to 40%, and wouldn't that be amazing? And even that was a big deal at that point. And it was a fairly mature marketplace at that point. So it's just something. It's acceptance. It's understanding, and it's just that market penetration that just takes. It's essentially a generation, which mortgage brokers have now been running for. Maybe a bit more than a generation now, where adults have got kids who are now borrowing, and those adults have been using a broker their whole life, and so they they tell their kids, go find yourself a good mortgage broker. It's not go to the bank anymore. It's go find yourself a good mortgage broker.
I remember a few months ago having a conversation with, let's describe him as an industry veteran. He'd be in his 60s and he was broking back in the 90s, in the early days of the industry. And I remember him telling me brokers then, their market share was less than 5%. And people would talk about, oh my God, like imagine if we ever got to 10%. And brokers were very much second-class citizens then. But thankfully, that share has just grown and grown and grown. We're at 81% now. 8 years earlier, 55%. So that's a big jump in a very short amount of time. How high do you think broker market share will go?
Oh, you ask me this every time, Nick, and it's just like it's really interesting one. You think that 90% would have to be the max. And it's you mentioned those couple of other countries like the UK and Holland, where they're at 76 and 85 for the UK. And you would think 90% would be the max, because there's always going to be a small percentage of people that for some reason need to deal with the bank directly, or they just want to. They like doing their own research, and there's some online products for very vanilla deals where you fit in this nice small square box, and and if that's something that you're comfortable doing. So I think 90% would have to be the max, but it's I'd like to see if there was any stats on whether that rate of growth is slowing down at all, Nick. It's and whether we're going to creep up to 85% or even 90%. So that would be interesting to see.
So you're thinking maybe we could peak at 85 or 90. So as much as we love brokers, you don't think broker market share will ever exceed 100%?
No, definitely will not ever exceed 100%, Nick.
Okay, well, thank you for just toning things down a bit. I can get a bit carried away, so it's always nice to have a realistic person in the discussion with me. Let's move on to our next story, what the last 20 years can teach us about property. Market shift, forecasts change, but 20 years of data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics has something to say that no economist can argue with. Between March 2006 and March 2026, property prices more than doubled in every capital city. Median prices rose by 120% in Darwin, 158 in Melbourne, 170 in Perth, 178 in Canberra, 185 in Hobart, 216 in Sydney, 250 in Adelaide, and 254% in Brisbane. The average annual growth rates range from 4% in Darwin to 6.5% in Brisbane. Owen, let's start at the top. Are you surprised that Brisbane and Adelaide experienced the most growth of all the capital cities over the past 20 years?
No, not at all. And if you broke down those last 20 years in both of those cities, most of that growth has been in the last maybe 6 or 7 years. So it just it's more about yes, I remember talking about Brisbane and Adelaide 20 years ago as if why would anyone buy there? And that's the questions I always got when we talked about people buying in Brisbane, let alone Adelaide. 20 years ago, it's like buying in Brisbane. It's just like, but it never grows. It never grows. Like it was stated as an actual fact that Brisbane property just doesn't grow, but look at it now. It's at the top of the table. And it's because there was this thing called COVID where everyone suddenly wanted to move to Brisbane and demand outstripped supply. So guess what happened to prices? And there was a number of other factors as well, but that was a big one which just made everything skyrocket.
Okay, well, let's look at the other end of the table. Are you surprised that Darwin and Melbourne experienced the least growth over the past 20 years?
Not so surprised about Darwin. It's a very small market. I mean, it's smaller than Townsville. And it really only makes it on the list because it's a territory capital. But it does have some factors that mean that you might want to invest there, mainly price point and your return, and it has a spurt of growth every now and then. But nothing to get too excited about on a regular basis. Melbourne, on the other hand, I mean, it really is the poor cousin, isn't it? It's used to be up there with trailing Sydney all the time. You could always count on Melbourne to chase Sydney for growth, and never quite get there. But I mean, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth have all gone well beyond Melbourne now, and it's like yes, but unfortunately, that's more government interference with the current government that's been in power for so long in Victoria. I think we can start calling it the People's Republic of Victoria nowadays. So hopefully by the end of the year there'll be a new government in Victoria where we can start getting some positivity in the Victorian economy, and people might actually want to invest there, and we can get some growth. So,
given the recent changes to negative gearing and CGT rules, do you think there will be as much price growth in the next 20 years as the previous 20 years?
I don't think those two things will necessarily be a major factor in price growth over the next 20 years. The major factor will be confidence in the economy, and the ability to provide more supply in the marketplace, and having that demand keep going to be able to fill up that supply. So it's they're really the only factors that we need to take into account. Yes, things like incentives, tax incentives, and tax policy will help influence, as well as handouts for first home buyers and the like. But they're not a major factor in the drive of the property market.
Let's move on to our final story. ACT makes major housing reform. No first home buyer in the ACT will have to pay stamp duty from 1 July 2026 under a measure announced in the Territory's budget. That will make the ACT the first jurisdiction in Australia to abolish stamp duty for all first home buyers. Stamp duty will also be removed for all new unit titled properties bought by owner-occupiers. Also, stamp duty exemptions will be expanded for pensioners, eligible NDIS participants, and all home buyers who have not owned property in the past 5 years. Chief Minister Andrew Barr said, "Stamp duty has long been one of the biggest upfront hurdles to entering the housing market. From 1 July 2026, that barrier is gone for first home buyers in the ACT. We made this commitment and this budget delivers it in full." Owen, what do you think of the ACT's decision to remove stamp duty for first home buyers?
It's a good start. Stamp duty is a stupid tax. It's the stupidest tax that any government has ever come up with, and it does nothing except for hinder people to be able to get into a property. And there's no real reason for having it these days. So it's a dumb tax. So my opinion on it is it's a good start. They should do it across the board. And if they then turn around and go, well, how should we replace that revenue? It's just like, well, maybe a broader based land tax. It makes a lot more sense, and you can change those figures to make it easier for lower price point properties, for people who can't afford to pay too much land tax, and it's something that will be more linked towards people's income rather than an affordability. And if there's not this big stupid entry tax to get into a property, then it'll be easier for people to sell and buy as their affordability changes, rather than having this huge tax that they have to try and get around with taking into account of whether they need to move house or not.
Okay, so do you think the government's done the right decision by scrapping stamp duty for first home buyers? I'm going to play devil's advocate here. We've spoken many times about the dangers of government policies that increase demand rather than supply, because that pushes up prices. By scrapping stamp duty for first home buyers, isn't the ACT effectively giving every first home buyer more money to spend? And won't that therefore lead to an increase in prices for entry-level homes?
Yeah, quite possibly. And this is why I think it should be done across the board. It's you do it for everyone, makes it easier for people to buy and sell, but people will be limited by what they can afford by having a broad-based land tax, and they'll be able to factor in for lower price properties that'll have a lower rate on them, to be able to help people who can only afford a cheaper property to live in, and then the higher price properties can have a higher land tax on them for people who can obviously afford them. And it's but this is something that governments really don't think about. Yes, and these are some of the actual smart choices that the government could have thought about, talking to all of their state counterparts. Federal government I was talking about, talking to all their state government counterparts to see if they could actually get creative with their budget and do something positive to help the market, instead of just fiddling with the tax arrangements to win a few votes.
You've raised the idea a couple of times in the past few minutes, and many economists have also raised the idea that we eliminate stamp duty and we replace it with a broad-based land tax that raises the same amount of money. However, what would you think about retaining stamp duty, but asking people to pay it not when they buy the home, but when they sell the home?
I mean, it's almost the same thing, isn't it? It's I can. It's
I guess it's a
and
sales tax rather than a purchase tax, but it's coming from a large pot of money, so people don't feel like they have to. People aren't going to feel like it's difficult to find the money.
yes. No, I mean that's an option that haven't come up with before, and it's I mean it's certainly something different. It could be an alternative for first home buyers, especially to help them get into the market. And it's and maybe it's that choice gives people the choice of paying the annual tax or paying it when they sell the property.
Giving people choices, that's interesting. Surely we should come up with a one-size-fits-all solution, and government knows best.
Oh, Nick. It's and you know what? The former New South Wales state government provided that choice to first home buyers of either paying stamp duty up front. It wasn't upfront stamp duty, or paying a land tax, which spread it out over time. So, and then it got abolished as soon as the new government came in. But yeah, that was really the smartest thing that any state government has even attempted. So, but I don't mind the sound of the delayed stamp duty till the sale, and but it's I mean it's better than nothing. And at the moment, the ACT government is giving away nothing, and a lot of other state governments around the country do provide discounts or thresholds where you get free stamp duty as a first home buyer. So yeah, that's another option.
We've had some interesting topics today: property prices, stamp duty, mortgage broker market share. Covered a lot of ground. Always great to hear your opinions, Owen. And I will catch you again next week.
Thank you, Nick, and looking forward to seeing what's in the news next week. See ya.